So we're back to Anaconabot again, but it's a very similar argument to the fake Sagan argument, and it even contains the really cliche, empty, meaningless kind of arguments that are too often present, like, why don't you just kill yourself? Like, this is always just happening to me, it doesn't have anything to do with anything real in the world. I mean, you're basically explaining why Tyrannosaurus isn't a great model, and basically pointing out how human isn't any better than Tyrannosaurus and blah blah blah. And instead of making a counter argument, the argument is, well, if you don't like Tyrannosauruses, just kill yourself, and that fixes the problem. They don't exist anymore, right? Because you won't be able to see them and complain about them, so therefore they won't exist. If you don't like AIDS, kill yourself, right? If you don't like herpes, kill yourself. If you don't like anything bad that's happening, if you don't like some kind of horrible thing that happens, if you don't like child molestation, kill yourself. Don't try to fix it.
Oh, come on, Gary. No offense, but that is weak. You know, considering how often the anti-natalist is asked the question, why don't you commit suicide? I think you kind of have to admit that it's an obvious question, because if it wasn't an obvious question, people wouldn't ask it right away the minute they hear what your beliefs are. And for you to just dismiss it in such a flippant way seems dishonest to me. Now you say, oh, if you don't like AIDS, why don't you kill yourself? Oh, if you don't like herpes, why don't you kill yourself? Well, Gary, if you were making videos about AIDS awareness, and somebody came up and said, hey, you don't like AIDS, why don't you kill yourself? Yeah, I agree, that would be ridiculous. If you were making videos for a herpes reduction advocacy group, and then people came up and said, oh, you don't like herpes, why don't you kill yourself? Yeah, that would be equally ridiculous. But your philosophy is called Ephelism, Ephel being the word life spelled backwards. So, since life itself is what you object to, how is it unreasonable for people to ask why you don't commit suicide and spare yourself the thing that you don't like? I mean, look at it this way, Gary. If I was a fluoride conspiracist, like Alex Jones, who you mention very often, and my whole spiel was about how fluoride is mind control and it calcifies the pineal gland and the government puts it in the water to dumb us down, and then I was brushing my teeth with Crest toothpaste 5 times a day and making videos about it, it would be perfectly reasonable for somebody to come up to me and say, hey, if you hate fluoride so much, why are you brushing your teeth with Crest toothpaste? So, Gary, the reason why people keep asking you why you don't kill yourself is that if life itself is what you object to, if you consider that life is the result of quote-unquote unintelligent design, and that life is a mistake and it's a poor design that doesn't work well, then yeah, people are going to think it's a little bit hypocritical that you have a life and continue to live one when there's another option available. Hypocrisy really is what it comes down to, Gary. I mean, you're asking other people not to create life. Now, granted, you've specified and made it clear you're not advocating for anybody to kill themselves or to cut off their nuts, your words, fine. But you're so against life that you don't ever want it to be created again, at least not human life. And yet, you have a life. So you want to deprive future generations of something that you're unwilling yourself to give up. And you don't see any inherent hypocrisy in that at all? Now, Gary, you can fly off the handle and rage again like you did last time. But if what you're really trying to do is refine your philosophy as much as you can and get it to the point where it truly is airtight, then you should be grateful to me and other people for pointing out inconsistencies like this, because it'll help you to refine your philosophy and make it the best it can be, so that when you finally get down to writing your manifesto or your philosophical treatise or whatever you're going to be remembered for, you'll be ready to do it. You'll have worked out all the kinks. So instead of saying ridiculous stuff about AIDS and herpes that has nothing to do with the issue and just basically deflecting this criticism, why don't you roll up your sleeves, be a man, and address it? Answer the question, Gary. If you hate life so much and life is so bad and life is a mistake, why do you choose to continue living one? It's a fair question, Gary, and it deserves an answer.
So, Fake Sagan, I finished up on the more question video, and it actually ended with, him doing the whole kind of nice thing, which is irritating, in this context. I can't dislike you as a person kind of stuff, and I'm willing to go that far. I mean, I'm willing to say, that this whole whatever these contests, these interactions, again, you could even take it to the gladiator arena or something and just say, even though they will eventually, one of them will kill the other, or something, they may have acquired respect for each other, and when they put that last jab into his neck, to finish him off, put him out of his misery, they'll do so lamenting, and but also out of respect in a sense, or some kind of blah 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 blah, and all of that crap. But yeah, that's a symptom of being one of these gooey feel bags.
You like me, Gary. You have feelings. Faggot. I'm just kidding. I like you too.
That happens in our life. We even the shitty parts of our life become friendly. They become something that we habitize to, and all of that.
Even the shitty aspects of life are something that we become habitized to, and even the bad things about life can become friendly. Oh, be careful there, Gary. It sounds like you're saying that life isn't really all that bad, and all the pain and suffering can become pleasure and happiness if you look at it the right way. Seems like you're arguing for subjective experience rather than objective positive and negative value. You got to be careful about that, Gary.
Okay, so then he does something. This one is just an argument from total insanity. Sorry, I mean, I can't make any sense out of it. That a negative is better than a zero, because it's a number. See, zero is, in his opinion, isn't a number. It doesn't have a value correlate. And in my opinion, of course, it has a value correlate. That's why we put it in there, is because it does actually represent the non-existent positive.
The non-existent positive? What kind of Orwellian doublespeak bullshit is that, Gary? I never said that a negative is better than zero. What I said is that a negative number is a value. It might be a negative value, and yet it is still a value, whereas zero is no value at all. And look, like I've been saying in the comments section to other anti-natalists, you guys are the ones who chose to define your discourse in these mathematical terms of using value, so don't blame me. You guys made the rope, I'm just hanging you with it. Alright, so if we're going to measure things in terms of value and put this in mathematical terms, well, then you've made those rules and now you have to play by them. And a -2 or a -5 is a appreciable value, even if it's a negative value. Even if the value sucks, it's a value. Zero is no value. It's as simple as that. And this whole idea of the non-existent positive, that's nonsensical, Gary. That doesn't make any sense at all. You're going to have to explain that one to me if you don't mind.
So anyway, the likability thing, okay. I mean, I have this problem with a lot of people. I mean, it's like, Piro more than you, actually, in some sense. I mean, if Piro came to my house again, I'd be really compelled to just hit him over the head with a shovel. He's just so fucking annoying.
Yeah, it looks like you finally found something that we can both agree on, Gary. Only instead of hitting him with a shovel in the head, I would want to just bust him in the grill. That guy's teeth really annoy me. He looks like a jack-o'-lantern. But I guess as a Christian, I can't be punching people in the face anymore. That's something I'm really gonna miss. I guess no more assault charges for me.
Outside the confines of our subjective perception. Well, again, these are objective statements that there's a thing called torture, there's a thing called pleasure. These are accurate descriptive statements, and these things in the world can create amounts of this stuff, and we know one of them to be bad and one of them to be good, and this isn't that complicated, or at least one of them to be not bad, and that's the key word here. We know what bad is, and we know what you want to minimize is any kind of wasted suffering. By your silly theory, again, I could go to another planet and torture everything on the planet, and somehow it's okay, because torture doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, but Gary, what if it's a planet of all masochists? What if it's like the planet Cuculon or something, and they like being tortured? I mean, Gary, people pay for this. There are like porn websites dedicated to cock and ball torture where dudes have their genitals put in a vice and they like it. See, I really feel like I've hit on the Achilles heel of your entire thought system here, because the anti-natalist simply has no reply, apparently, for the subjectivity of human experience and how what one man considers pleasurable or painful, the next man might feel the exact opposite. You know, this is the fatal flaw in your philosophy that you have no answer to. Anyway, if you went to a planet of masochists and started torturing everybody, they would greet you as a messiah. They would love you, Gary.
You don't accept the premise that suffering is very different than comfort.
Gary, you already know that I don't accept that premise. Unless you really only did walk...
Right, exactly my point. I mean, you're a nihilist. You're not a Christian. Christians certainly understood the difference. That's why they describe heaven and hell, is because they know the difference, right? God wasn't saying, hey, I'll set up two things that are almost exactly alike. Heaven and hell. They're almost the same thing, and so choose which one you want to go to. Did the Christians do that, Christian? I mean, you're the authority now, right? You're a Christian, so you tell me. Is that what God intended you to believe? That heaven is just as good as zero and just as good as hell?
Oh, Gary. Oh, Gary. Oh, this is just too good. Let me just savor this moment for a second. Oh, it's so good. See, this is priceless. You think you've got me right where you want me, don't you? But in fact, you've played right into my hands, Gary. So let me recap before I get to the big reveal, okay? So Gary said, if you don't accept that there's a difference between suffering and pleasure, and then I replied, well, Gary, you already know that I don't accept that those are objectively different. It's all a matter of perspective. Subjective experience defines whether we consider phenomena to be pleasurable or painful. And then you said, oh, well then you're a nihilist. You're not really a Christian because there's an objective difference between heaven and hell. No, Gary, I'm just a type of Christian that you're not used to dealing with. And you have succeeded where everybody in my audience, my subscriber base, has failed. You've gotten me to reveal my particular brand of Christianity. I'm an Orthodox Christian, Gary. The most ancient and primordial form of Christianity, the type that the apostles practiced. Before all the silly rationalist philosophy and Reformation and all of that, the original old school Christianity. And we have a very different conception about heaven and hell. See, Western Christians really do kind of have this simplistic view that you do about that subject. You know, they think that heaven is a place where you float on the clouds and play a harp, and that hell is a fiery pit of brimstone with little devils that poke you in the butt with a pitchfork. Well, the Orthodox have a bit more of a nuanced view. And that view is entirely consistent with everything I've said.
There is no place where God is not. There is no place to escape the love of God. There is no place that we can hide from God's love for us that flows from his heart like a river of fire. And God says, for those who love me, God says, for those who love me, my love is like light and warmth. But to those who hate me and close their eyes against my light, my love is like a consuming fire.
And God says, to those who love me, my love feels like warmth and light. But to those who hate me, my love feels like an all-consuming fire. Sound familiar, Gary? See, that's the way I look at life, the world, and everything. It's all about subjective experience. You and I can look at the same rose, or to use your example, the same sunflower. Now, a man like you looks at the rose and sees only the thorns. There are some men who will look at the same rose and see only the bloom. And then there's the third type that will see some combination of both. If you love God, the afterlife will feel like a heaven to you. If you hate God, then his love will feel like an all-consuming fire, and you will feel like in hell. And in fact, you will be in hell. A hell of your own creation. By your rejection of God's love, your rebellion against God, you create your own hell. And just as the kingdom of God is present here on earth for those who keep his laws and for those who love him, the kingdom of hell can also be right here on earth if you reject God and rebel against him during this life. That's the Orthodox conception, Gary, and I am not a nihilist at all. I am not at all, Gary.
No, I don't think so. What makes hell hell? Oh, the fact that you're on fire and suffering. Is there something else you're doing in hell? Is hell eating cupcakes? Is hell looking at cupcakes?
Yes, Gary. Yes. Hell is looking at cupcakes, Gary. Hell is looking at cupcakes, yet seeing only nails. In other words, hell is your life. And by the grace of God, I will pull you out of it, kicking and screaming if I have to. End your rebellion against the Most High, Gary. Accept the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and find peace.